In the humid streets of Medellin, Colombia, where the scent of coffee mingles with gasoline and fear, one man's name once ruled over everything, spoken in whispers, painted on walls, feared by the government, and worshipped by the poor. His name was Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria, the man who built an empire of cocaine, blood, and power. But behind the billions of dollars, the private zoos, and the palatial estates lay a darker truth. A man whose quest for control turned an entire country into a war zone. A man who believed he was untouchable, yet whose empire would crumble as violently as it rose. This is the story of how one man became the most feared criminal in modern history, the ruthless Kingpin who terrorized a nation. Pablo Escobar was born on December 1, 1949, in the small town of Rio Negro, Colombia. His father was a farmer, his mother a school teacher. He grew up in nearby Medellin, a city that would later become the beating heart of his empire. From an early age, Escobar had ambition, fierce, unapologetic, and dangerously intelligent. He wasn't content to live a quiet life. By his teenage years, he was already involved in petty crime, selling fake diplomas, smuggling stereo equipment, even stealing tombstones and reselling them to smugglers. To him, crime wasn't just survival, it was business, and he was good at it. By the mid-1970s, Escobar found his true calling, cocaine. The United States was developing an insatiable appetite for the drug, and Colombia's jungles were the perfect production grounds. Escobar saw opportunity where others saw risk. He began smuggling small amounts into the U.S., and within years, his operation expanded into one of the most profitable criminal enterprises in the world. He built the Medellin Cartel, a network so vast and efficient it smuggled up to 15 tons of cocaine into the United States each day. At its peak, the cartel was making over $400 million a week. Forbes magazine even listed Escobar among the world's richest men. But money was never enough. Escobar wanted power, absolute power. He built luxurious estates, the most famous being Hacienda Naples, complete with private runways, lakes, and even a zoo filled with exotic animals. He handed out cash to the poor, built housing for slum residents, and funded schools and soccer fields. To the poor, he was a hero, a modern-day Robin Hood. But to the government, he was a nightmare. By the 1980s, Escobar's reach was almost mythical. Judges, politicians, and police were either bought or killed. He had a simple motto, plata o plomo, silver or lead, take the bribe or take a bullet. Those who refused were executed, sometimes in broad daylight, sometimes along with their entire families. Colombia was at war, not between armies, but between one man and the state itself. The turning point came in the early 1980s when the Colombian government, under pressure from the United States, agreed to extradite drug traffickers to the U.S. for Escobar. That was unacceptable. He could face local justice, manipulate local politics, but American prisons were beyond his control. So he launched a campaign of terror. Bombings rocked the capital. Judges and police chiefs were assassinated one after another. The goal was clear: to intimidate the government into banning extradition. In December 1984, Colombia was shaken when Justice Minister Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, who had spoken publicly against Escobar, was gunned down in his car. His murder marked the beginning of Escobar's war against the state. The government responded with a nationwide manhunt. But Escobar was untouchable. His money reached every corner of authority. His assassins, known as sicarios, were young, loyal, and fearless. For many of them, killing for Escobar meant escaping poverty. He used fear and generosity in equal measure, manipulating both loyalty and terror. In 1989, Escobar's violence reached a horrifying peak. To strike back at his enemies, he ordered the bombing of Avianca Flight 203, killing all 110 passengers on board, including innocent civilians. His intended target, a presidential candidate, wasn't even on the plane. It was one of the deadliest acts of terror in Colombian history. The same year, he ordered a car bomb at the headquarters of the Colombian security agency, DAS, killing more than 50 people. The message was unmistakable: no one was safe. Escobar's campaign of terror turned Medellin into one of the most dangerous cities in the world. More than 4,000 people would die in the violence he unleashed. But even as blood flowed in the streets, Escobar maintained his image among the poor. He continued to build homes and give food to the hungry. To some, he was a savior. To others, he was a monster. By 1991, the government, desperate to end the bloodshed, struck a deal. Escobar agreed to surrender on one condition. He would build his own prison. It was called La Catedral. Perched high in the hills overlooking Medellin, the prison was unlike anything in the world. It had a soccer field, a bar, a jacuzzi, even a waterfall. The guards were handpicked by Escobar himself. From behind the walls, he continued to run his cartel, giving orders and managing his wealth as if nothing had changed. For a time, the violence eased. But peace was an illusion. When the government discovered that Escobar was still orchestrating murders and trafficking drugs from La Catedral, they decided to transfer him to a real prison. But before they could act, Escobar vanished. He escaped effortlessly, disappearing into the mountains. The humiliation was complete. The most powerful criminal in the world was on the run again. The Colombian government had had enough. With U.S. support, they formed a special task force, the Search Block. Their mission: hunt down Pablo Escobar at any cost. At the same time, a new and ruthless enemy emerged: Los Pepis, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar. This shadowy group was made up of rival traffickers, former allies, and paramilitary forces who wanted revenge. They began systematically killing Escobar's associates, destroying his properties, and hunting down his family members. Between the government, U.S. agents, and Los Pepis, Escobar's empire began to collapse. His vast fortune evaporated as his assets were seized. His trusted men were killed or captured. His family was forced into hiding. The once mighty Kingpin was now a ghost, moving from safe house to safe house, sleeping on thin mattresses, paranoid and exhausted. By late 1993, he was desperate. He tried to contact his family using a radio phone, which authorities traced to a neighborhood in Medellin. On December 2, 1993, one day after his 44th birthday, search block forces surrounded the building where he was hiding. A brief gunfight erupted. Escobar tried to escape across the rooftops but was shot and killed. His death marked the end of an era, but not the end of the pain he caused. When news of his death broke, Medellin erupted in chaos. Thousands of people flooded the streets, not to celebrate, but to mourn. To many of the city's poor, Pablo Escobar had been a benefactor, a man who built homes and gave food when no one else cared. At his funeral, an estimated 25,000 people attended. Some wept openly, reaching out to touch his coffin as if saying goodbye to a hero. Others watched silently, knowing that the man they buried had brought more suffering to their country than anyone before him. How could one man be both loved and hated so deeply? How could a criminal become a saint in the eyes of the desperate? Perhaps the answer lies in what Escobar represented: a reflection of a nation divided by poverty and power, corruption and survival. For years after his death, his legend only grew. His face appeared on murals, t-shirts, and even tourist souvenirs. Hollywood turned his story into films and series, portraying him as both a villain and an anti-hero. But behind the pop culture fascination lies a grim truth. Pablo Escobar left behind a legacy of death. More than 50,000 lives lost in the drug wars, families torn apart, cities destroyed, and a country traumatized by decades of violence. The investigation into Escobar's empire revealed an intricate web of corruption that reached deep into politics, law enforcement, and even international institutions. Many questions remain unanswered. How much did foreign intelligence agencies truly know? Were they complicit in letting Escobar rise, as long as his enemies were more dangerous? Did the Colombian government's compromises help prolong his reign? Even today, rumors persist that he didn't die that day on the rooftop, that he may have escaped, that the man shot was a double, while evidence strongly refutes those claims. Conspiracy theories continue to feed the legend of the man who seemed too powerful to fall. In the years since his death, Escobar's family has lived under constant scrutiny. His son, Sebastian Mariquin, changed his name and spoke publicly about his father's crimes, expressing remorse and seeking reconciliation. His widow and daughter have remained mostly out of the public eye, carrying the burden of a name the world would never forget. Medellin, once the murder capital of the world, has changed dramatically. The hills that once echoed with gunfire now hum with tourism and innovation. Street art covers old walls, and the city's skyline tells a story of resilience and rebirth. But in the quiet corners of the city, the memory of Escobar still lingers. His former mansion lies in ruins, his zoo now open to the public, a surreal reminder of the empire that once was. Some locals refuse to speak his name. Others still revere him. The duality of his legacy mirrors Colombia's struggle to heal from the wounds he left behind. Was Pablo Escobar simply a product of his environment, a man who rose from poverty in a corrupt system? Or was he something far darker, a symbol of what happens when greed and power consume the human soul? Perhaps the most chilling truth is this: Pablo Escobar wasn't a myth. He wasn't a ghost story told to frighten children. He was real, a man of flesh and blood who used fear as his weapon and love as his disguise. He built an empire from nothing, and he destroyed it with his own hands. His story reminds us that power gained through violence will always end in ruin, that no matter how high a man climbs, the weight of blood will always drag him back down. And as we look back at the smoldering ashes of his empire, one question still lingers: how many Pablo Escobars are out there, waiting to rise again? Because history has shown us one haunting truth: empires fall, but ambition never dies. This is Crimes Unknown, where cold cases refuse to stay buried. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more haunting mysteries. And don't forget to like the video to support real crime stories that deserve to be heard. Drop your theories in the comments,